Democrats and other pestilential nudniks are still trying to solve the impenetrable mystery of how their presidential candidate lost to someone as horrible as they pretended Donald Trump was. Chairman of the Democrat National Committee, Vladimir Jihad, recently discussed the issue on a Zoom call with a group of masked rioters and financial conmen called Black Lives Matter, unless they don't. Mr. Jihad, who usually identifies as a woman except at this time of month when he feels the cramps just aren't worth it, told the group, quote, "Like many of you, I've been trying to unravel the puzzling riddle of how anyone could reject the Democrat Party. After weeks of reflection, I began to wonder if it was because we burned down cities, mismanaged wars, mutilated children, and allowed criminals to pour across our borders. But then I thought, nah, it must be the fault of the voters. Sure, there was terrible inflation, higher crime, and more global threats, but that was just in real life. On the news, everything was great. The problem was that instead of getting the facts from trusted sources like NBC and the New York Times, voters were swamped with misinformation from social media and their wallets and the sad, hungry faces of their children and their own eyes. We have to work harder to keep that misinformation from spreading by repeatedly calling people racist until they're intimidated into silence. We just haven't done enough of that." Unquote. Despite the gloomy outcome, the Zoom call was immediately followed by a celebratory gala during which the participants fondly relived the party's glory days by burning Minneapolis to the ground again. To investigate further, the DailyWire dispatched crack reporter Spencer Crack to Hawaii, where he entered the Tiki-Taki Lounge, quickly downed 4 Mai Tais, fell to the floor, and rolled under a table in order to interview Kamala Harris, who had gone there to recuperate after her election loss and the following bender. According to a transcript of the interview, Harris told Crack, "Sure, the election didn't have the result I wanted, with millions of people cheering hooray for President Kamala, or Kamala, or however the hell you pronounce it, but I still have the same power, the same energy, even the same underwear, which may account for this terrible urinary infection, or maybe that's just the booze. Whatever happens, I'll always be the first female vice president of the United States, and maybe even the last if anyone was paying attention to how that worked out." And to those who say no one remembers the losing candidate, I say, oh yeah? What about that guy? The one in the tank. Everyone remembers him. Maybe not his name, but that picture was hilarious. So don't let anyone take your power, especially after you've had a few. Things get blurry, and the next thing you know, your power is gone and you're lying under a table. Now, why don't you go buy me another Mai Tai, and while you're at it, make sure my husband's gone home. The last time he saw me talking to another man, he left a handprint in my cheek so deep I looked like a second grader's Play-Doh project." Unquote. While the Democrats' loss will continue to confound experts for years, many feel it was a simple matter of the wrong candidate. Joe Scarborough of MSNBC said this to his audience, quote, "Excuse me, sir, before you change the channel, let me just tell you one more thing. Kamala's candidacy was a complete media fantasy. We told you she had joy. We lied. We told you she was competent. We lied. We told you her VP pick wasn't a homosexual serial killer. And okay, maybe that was half true. But we should have just stuck with Joe Biden, who was sharp as a tack, honest as the day is long, and totally committed to the rule of law." Unquote. Whatever the reason for the loss, most Democrats agree. There is now no way Americans can escape horrifying news stories about President Trump's oppression, corruption, and bigotry unless they turn off the television and pay attention to reality, in which case Democrats may never win an election again. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, time is running out. DailyWire Plus is 50% off, but not for much longer. Get a full year of uncensored shows, exclusive series, documentaries, and more, all at half the price. Head to dailywire.com Cyber Week. dailywire.com/Cyber Week before it's too late. So, wow, I have to say, you know how I invented the running gag, the Klavanless Week or the Klavanless Weekend? The show, when we started, was 4 days a week before I stopped that because was driving me insane. But I would go 4 days a week, and then every weekend something just awful would happen. There'd be some crisis, and I would start to say, well, that was the Klavanless Weekend. Every time I leave, you guys let the country fall apart. So take Thanksgiving off, and what happens? South Korea goes up in smoke. France's government falls. Syria is coming to pieces. There was the Hunter Biden pardon. There was this assassination in New York. I mean, it was a Klavan-less week like there hasn't been for a long time. If you had only bought my novel, A Woman Underground, like I told you to, this wouldn't have happened. But just amazing. This Klavan-lessness is a very, very dangerous thing. I'll try to stay here at least until Christmas when you're on your own. If you leave a comment wherever you listen to the show, I hope it's at DailyWire Plus. I hope you're subscribing there and you get it with fewer commercials. But leave a comment wherever you listen and we will take a look. And if it is just absolutely morally reprehensible, we will put it on this show because that's what we're here for. Today's comment comes from, it looks like Andre Imhak or Imhak, 7429. He says, you need to stop playing the Trump happiness montage. Every time you play it, I start cheering and yelling and barking and crying like Hunter after a bowl of afternoon crack. Come on, man. And it's absolutely true. It's really a cruel, cruel thing to do. I've just got to stop playing it altogether.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
Zippity-dee-da, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. Yay! You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
Yeah, that's off. I'm glad we don't do that anymore. Today's episode, can conservatives be happy now? People keep asking me all through Thanksgiving, people keep asking me, why am I so happy after the election? And some people say, well, they hate Trump and I shouldn't be happy that Trump won. But a lot of people who like Trump say, okay, he won, but now, you know, the fight is just beginning. The Army and the FBI, the deep state are already having secret meetings on how to resist him. This is true. And Joe Biden is going to pardon. They're talking about pardoning Anthony Fauci and Adam Schiff, which I actually hope they do, because that would send the Democrat Party into exile for at least a dozen years, maybe 16 years. And it's not that I don't care about those things. I'm interested in politics. I've always been interested in politics. I like paying attention in policy, and these things actually matter. But I'm not happy because Trump won. I am happy because Trump's winning is the visible sign of a much greater invisible victory, which is a powerful blow that I believe we have struck against the empire of lies. You know, a few weeks ago, I was on a YAF panel with my friend Larry O'Connor. I'm a big Larry fan. Larry has a radio show on WMAL, and I wake up to it every morning. And I just think he's one of the better commentators out there. And I also think he's just a terrific human being. If anybody tells him I said that about him, I'll call you a liar. But still, he's a great guy. And at one point in this panel, we were discussing the election, and he said the Democrats lost because people don't like being lied to. And I said, you know, I'm not sure that's true. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, people love being lied to, but they just don't like what happens to them when they live in those lies, right? They like being told they can defy gravity and fly, but when they put on their Wicked Witch of the West cap and jump off the roof, they don't like what it feels like when you smash into the pavement. You know, so they love being told that the government is going to pay for their health care and they guarantee their income and all this stuff, but they just don't like inflation and joblessness and being dependent on government and waiting 2 months to see a doctor and then being told maybe you should consider, because that'd be cheaper. They like being told they can have sex whenever they want or eat as much as they want, and nobody's going to shame. It's only people shaming them that makes them feel bad about being fat and unhealthy and cheap and lonely and slut and racked with guilt over an abortion, which they loved being told that an abortion was a human right. It was a woman's right to choose. They just don't like the feeling that lasts for the rest of their life that maybe they did something that was bad. All of us, I think, it's not just the left. We all love being lied to, but we hate being slaves, which is the result of being lied to. If you live in lies, you become a slave. And the reason for that is because to protect their lies, liars have to silence the truth, which is you. They have to tell you not to say certain things, so you wind up in a country like the one, not the one I was born in, not the one I grew up in, not the one I lived most of my life in, but a country like the one we're living in now, where college students are afraid to sit up in their dorms at night arguing like they used to because they're so scared they'll have the wrong opinion. That you can't speak a simple truth that transgenderism is a form of, without getting death threats from transgender people who are. And women, this is one that really bothers me, obviously. I talk about it a lot. Women can't even think to themselves that maybe feminism has ruined their lives without censoring themselves because they're afraid of going against the grain of what everybody tells them is the truth. I noticed the other day when I used the word on YouTube, they cut the word out. They edit the word out because liars convince themselves that it's only the truth that makes bad things happen, right? If they can silence the truth, then the lies will become the truth. The reason I'm happy is because Trump's election shows us that God has not quite forgotten us yet. He gave us just enough voices speaking the truth to break through all the lies. And so today, this is what I want to talk about, today's episode. I want to talk about how we can find our happiness by understanding the structures of the lies that we've been enslaved by and breaking through them so we can get at the truth. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like taking a call on speaker for everyone to hear. Here's something that might surprise you. Your internet service provider can see every single website you visit. And in the US, they're legally allowed to sell that information to advertisers. Think about that. Every search, every click, every late night rabbit hole you've gone down, all potentially for sale to the highest bidder. But there is a solution. ExpressVPN reroutes all of your traffic through secure, encrypted servers, making it virtually impossible for anyone to track your online activity. It's consistently rated #1 by tech experts at CNET and The Verge, and I can tell you why it works. I use ExpressVPN every day. The peace of mind knowing my banking information and personal data are protected on public Wi-Fi is invaluable. The best part, it's simple to use. One click, and you're protected across all your devices, phones, laptops, tablets, everything. Right now, you can take advantage of ExpressVPN's Black Friday, Cyber Monday offer to get the absolute best VPN deal you'll find all year. Use my special link, expressvpn.com/Klavan, to get 4 extra months with the 12-month plan or 6 extra months with the 24-month plan, totally free. That's expressvpn.com/Klavan to get an extra 4 or even 6 months of ExpressVPN for free. And I know what you're wondering. Yes, ExpressVPN, but how do I spell Klavan? It's Klavan.
There are no easy Klavan.
Chapter 1, Gender Lies. Now, I'm not going to be talking, we all know what the gender lies are, but I'm not going to be talking about that. I want to talk about the structure of lies. So this Tennessee case went before the Supreme Court on Wednesday, I think it was. Tennessee banned irrevocable treatments for children who want to pretend that they're a different sex. And this law is being challenged. That law came about in the wake of Matt Walsh's work, and I've always said Matt is doing God's work and God love him for it. But, he had these revelations about what Vanderbilt in Nashville was doing, and these doctors, he had video of unbelievable audio of doctors praising transgender operations because they make patients for life. Because since it's all a hideous mutilation out of Nazi Germany, it requires a lifetime of health care after they do it to you. So people are saying, hey, we made a bundle off this. And that caused Vanderbilt to take all this information down and hopefully stop doing it. And in the wake of that, Tennessee passed this law banning it. So now your government, your federal government that you voted for, or somebody did apparently, and that you're paying for, went into the Supreme Court and argued, so help me God, that protecting children from the Nazi practice of cutting their organs off for no reason, no scientific reason whatsoever. I'm telling you, this is something that Joseph Mengele would have said, I can't do that. That would be unkind. It's an amazing thing. Your government went in and argued before the Supreme Court that violated the equal protection guarantee of the Constitution because it treats boys and girls as if boys and girls were different, right? Because a boy might get male hormones if he needed them, so why can't a girl? The Ketanji Brown Jackson, your Supreme Court justice, this seemed, treating boys and girls as if they were two different kinds of people, two different genders, let's say. Let's make up a word for it, two different sexes. It was just like an old Virginia law that barred mixed race marriages. Here is Ketanji, cut 2.
As I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
So it's the same thing, black and white, it's the same difference as girl and boy. And then the ACLU lawyer who was arguing for overturning the Tennessee law is the wonderful name of Chase Strangio. If that's not how it's pronounced, I don't care. I'm going to pronounce it that way anyway, Chase Strangio. And this guy literally argued before the Supreme Court that thinking that you're a different sex is an immutable characteristic. Transgenderism is an immutable characteristic. Can't change it, but the sex you're born with is not an immutable characteristic, and you can change it. He actually argued that because he's obviously, and he went on the news, and this is what the news loves. The news loves to sell you this, that he says it's about tears. Whoever is crying is right. That's always the argument. This is what Strangio, so help me God, this is his name, what he said, cut 3.
Nobody has to provide this medication to adolescents. These are not doctors being forced to provide this medication. These are doctors who are wanting to treat their patients in the best way that they know how, based on the best available evidence to us. And these are young people who may have known since they were 2 years old exactly who they are, who suffered for 6-7 years before they had any relief. And what's happening here, it's not the kids who are consenting to this treatment, it's the parents who are consenting to the treatment. And as a parent, I would say, when our children are suffering, we are suffering.
Oh, we're suffering. I always wish these interviews, when people say things like that, if people know at 2 years old that they're the wrong sex, I always just wish 2 guys in white coats would come on and lift him up under the shoulder. Sorry, Messi, this guy escaped, but no such luck. Now, the general take on the arguments before the Supreme Court is there are probably enough conservative justices to let the law stand, let Tennessee and other states, because I think 13 or so other states have also banned these horrifying Nazi practices, but they let the law stand, but on the grounds that the court shouldn't be deciding these complex medical issues, they should be decided by doctors informing the state legislatures. Then they brought up the fact that England, Sweden, places that really supported this whole transgender savagery have dialed this back. It doesn't stop suicides, as Richard Levine, Admiral, I should say, of the ocean waves, Richard Levine has lied repeatedly in Congress that it does stop suicides every time it breaks out of Arkham Asylum. I'm like living in crazy land. I'm sorry, but and it can't be reversed. And people grow up and tend to regret the fact that Joseph Mengele butchered their bodies when they were young. And so the unknown here is obviously Justice Gorsuch, who was silent throughout the 2.5 hours of argument, because he's the one who wrote the decision in the Bostock case. The idiot decision in the Bostock case was John Roberts, the Chief Justice, also sided with, ruling that an employer who fires an individual merely for being gay or transgender defies the law, which means that, for instance, if a guy starts using the girls' bathroom or coming to work in a skirt, you can't say, look, that's not behavior that we sanction here because it's against societal norms which recognize that there's a difference between men and women. So it's ridiculous. Now, my point is this. I don't want to talk about the kind of lie that, obviously it's gender. I want to talk about the kind of lie this is. If I say we can't discriminate on the basis of sex, and I say, well, you can't make a law saying that, women can't go to the movies, but men can go to the movies, that's fine. I still recognize that men and women are different. But if Gorsuch or some other clown goes out and says, well, that must mean that I can't, I have to let men into women's bathrooms, that's just completely saying that the language doesn't mean anything, And so when you interpret the law to mean that men can play on women's sports teams, or which the Biden administration tried to do with Title IX, or that men can use the ladies' room at work and all this stuff, you're doing it in terms of an ideology. What you have is a complete system of thought that works in itself without reference to reality. Now, for many lawyers, and I talk to a lot of lawyers, I know a lot of lawyers, for many lawyers, the law is an ideology. Whenever you hear a lawyer say, oh, the law is so beautiful, it's so perfect, it's like this crystal structure, it's so wonderful. What they mean is that once you have a law, you can make reference to that law with other laws, and precedent can make reference to this and all this, and you forget the fact that the original law is meant to help human beings. This is the wonderful thing about Donald Trump, by the way, that when he looks at a problem, he's trying to solve it in terms of human beings, not in terms of an ideology. And people say, well, that Donald Trump, he has no ideology. And yeah, that can be a flaw. He might not have a philosophy, and that can be a flaw. But he does try to solve things in human terms. But lawyers, a lot of times, if you have a lawyer in your family or a lawyer friend, just say to him, the law has to refer to something outside itself, and watch his eyes. I don't understand. This is how ideology works. It sets the terms of the argument, and then all the arguments come back around to itself. And it's so powerful. Ideology is so powerful. A perfect idea that makes no reference to outside reality. People will slaughter millions of people like the communists did, or cut off the little boys because the idea makes sense. If you believe that there is a moral order, that there is a reality outside of you, and you wake up and you're surrounded by dead bodies, you start to think, guess what? Maybe this idea is wrong. Maybe the idea that abortion is healthcare is wrong. Maybe the idea of transgenderism is wrong. Maybe the idea of communism or Nazism is wrong. See, because a woman, as I keep saying, when Matt says, what is a woman? The answer to that is not, somebody with two X's or something like that. It is a complete human experience that people have from within and that people have from without. You can't invent it. You can't just say you have it. You have to be, there is such a thing as gender assignment. It's made by God. So just remember this. We'll get back to that about the idea of creation versus nature. But just remember in the meantime, the lie is ideology. It's the lie that an idea is true if it makes internal sense, even if it has no relation to reality, by which I mean reality as experienced by human beings, but that is created outside of itself. So you have to remember this. You have to watch when people are doing this. Say, yes, that idea makes sense. I mean, Freudianism was like this. He would say, you want to sleep with your mother, so you repress it. And you go like, I don't want to sleep with my mother. Yeah, because you're repressing it, but you can't get out of that ideology. And that's the lie that this transgenderism is. It's just a woman who wrote a book. It's a terrible book. It's a grift. It's a philosophy. It's a theory, but it has no relationship to reality. And that's the lie. It's the lie of ideology. Let's look at a couple more. The average guy doesn't eat half of the recommended serving sizes of fruits and vegetables in a day. And the reason is it's disgusting. The stuff drips down your face and it's too much stuff to put in your mouth. I have a solution. I mean, look at me. You can tell I'm, somewhat over 35, but I don't look a day over 87. And the reason I look so great is because I use Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies. There's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure you get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and vegetables every day. Now stop, because it's a horrible thought. But Balance of Nature provides an on-the-go solution by taking 31 different fruits and vegetables, freeze-drying them, turning them into a powder, putting them into a capsule. Can't get more convenient than that. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code Klavan for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com. Promo code, how do you spell it? KLAVAN. Chapter 2, Political Lies. So Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter, and I know that everybody's been talking about this, and I don't want to reiterate a lot of things that people said, but we have to go through it quickly just to establish the kind of lie that we're dealing with here, because these are the lies that have enslaved. I mean, really, like I said, this is not the America I grew up in. It's not the America I've known for most of my life. This is an America of fear. And it's an America of enslaved minds enslaved to feminism, to leftism, to racism, to all kinds of to wokeism, to all these ideas that have been damaged by the new media and by people who don't lie. So that even while Trump was supposed to be Hitler and was supposed to be the worst thing ever, people elected him. That is the miracle of this election. The wonderful thing about this election is not the fact that Trump is elected, which I think is great, by the way. I don't think I'm running that down. It is the fact that he was elected means that the empire of lies, this monster of lies, has been damaged. All right, so Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter, and he pardoned him and this I'm reading this from the pardon, for those offenses against the United States which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through December 1, 2024, including but not limited to all offenses charged or prosecuted, including any that have resulted in convictions by Special Counsel David C. Weiss. So anything this guy did, if there are bodies that are dug up, then he can be, I guess, charged by the states. But anything that he did that's a federal crime in this 10-year period, he's off the hook. And there really hasn't been anything this sweeping, maybe the Nixon pardon, but really this is pretty unprecedented. All right. So let's just go through this really quickly. Biden and his people repeatedly said he would not do this. This is cut 4, just a little montage, a super cut of Biden and his spokesman pretending that he was not going to pardon his son.
Let me ask you, will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well, is there?
I just said no. I just answered.
Would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no.
I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision, and I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Now, the media bought into this entirely, of course, because the media is a corrupt arm of the Democrat Party, which is a corrupt arm of the deep state. And they not only, there's like a 9-minute clip from our friends at Grabian. It's a wonderful clip, just one person after another saying he's not going to pardon him and he's not going to pardon him in the media. But I just took a little bit of that clip to just show you that they didn't just believe him, but they made philosophical hay out of it. In other words, they said that this shows the difference between Biden and the Democrats and that evil Donald Trump, who wouldn't accept the fact that he had been convicted of something that nobody knew what it was, and he thought for some reason that was wrong, right? So in other words, those are the two things that we're comparing. It's not apples and oranges that Trump was being hunted by the Biden administration for things that we can't even define and convicted and indicted of things that we cannot even define. Everybody keeps saying he's a convicted felon, but nobody can name what the felony is because even the judge couldn't name what it was. And that somehow is the same, but we're comparing that to the good, decent man of honor that Joe Biden is because he will not even pardon his son. So here's a little bit of that media clip from Grabian, cut 5.
One side, Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system. And on the other, Republicans and Trump protecting Trump.
Our current president of the United States has so much respect for the law that he has said he would not pardon his son. I mean, again, it's all about the contrast.
President Biden saying, I will respect whatever this jury decides versus right. Donald Trump after he was convicted on 34 counts, saying the entire system is rigged against him.
Their latest attack has been that Joe Biden has politicized and weaponized the DOJ, right? That was the whole argument around Donald Trump's conviction. And this week, of course, Hunter Biden was found guilty, and Joe Biden has very clearly said he would not pardon his son, he would not commute his sentence. How stark is this difference? I mean, how can Republicans keep making this argument now that Joe Biden has really put it out there?
Now, this is the news media, quote unquote, as a fiction operation. They're doing what I do for a living. They're making up stories and telling stories, right? And Joe Biden knows this is going on and knows that he can depend on it because he has been able to all his life. And he said in his pardon statement, for my entire career, I have followed a simple principle, just tell the American people the truth. This is coming from one of the most corrupt politicians in my lifetime, right? This is a guy who plagiarized speeches repeatedly. When he got caught, he said, it's the only time I ever did it, but he had done it many times before. He lied even about the driver who was involved in the car crash that killed his wife and child. He lied about how his son, Beau, died. He lied about his college career. He lied about the fact that he was an anti-racist, part of the civil rights movement and was arrested and was protesting. He said he never talked to Hunter about his influence peddling business. Then when he was caught, having talked to him, he said he was never involved in it. Then when he was caught having been involved in it, he said he never profited from it. And we know he must have profited from it. He said the laptop was Russian disinformation when he knew it wasn't. And in his pardon statement, he said, no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. And that is wrong. But we know from the whistleblowing IRS investigators that he was singled out in a way that was positive for him. The investigators at the IRS were prevented from asking questions that might lead back to the president. The investigation was delayed until the statute of limitations on the worst offenses ran out. The plea deal that was arranged was so dishonest, the judge couldn't even accept it. And on top of this, the evidence from the laptop and Tony Bobolinsky was that Biden was deeply, deeply involved in the influence peddling business. He showed up at meetings. He implanted Hunter in positions where he could milk money. He took part of his income, the 10% for the big guy that was hidden in 20 shell companies. He's a mean, I've always disliked this guy. He's a mean, dirty little man. He was elected as the face of a return to normal after the chaos of the Trump years. And then he opened our borders. He spent our money, like it was water. He allowed the mutilation of children. He retreated from Afghanistan in disgrace. Just to compare what any ordinary man might see according to what the media is selling, here's a letter in the Wall Street Journal from a guy named David Burke in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He says, the lies from Mr. Biden and his administration go on. And then he quotes him. He would unite this nation. This inflation is transitory. Bidenomics is working. The border is secure. The Afghanistan withdrawal was an extraordinary success. I'm the only president this decade that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. This is a guy writing in a letter to the editor, right? This is not a reporter. And compare that to the media. And these are the same guys who told us that before the Trump-Biden debate, before it was revealed that Biden was what everybody in conservative media was saying he was, they told us that Biden was sharp as a tack. Just remember, here's Joe Scarborough, cut 6.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Joe Scarborough, if it weren't the truth, he wouldn't say it. And they did this. David Muir, ABC, right? Remember during the debate, he fact-checked Trump 5 times. Every time Muir was wrong. Every time Trump was right. Every time. No one's ever fired. Anthony Fauci lied about the lab leak, lied about gain-of-function research, never fired. No one has been fired. So why aren't they fired? Why doesn't someone look at Morning Joe and say, you lied about big things repeatedly and you knew it was a lie. It wasn't just a mistake. You lied about important things. And we're a news operation, even though we're an opinion operation. It wasn't your opinions. These were lies. It's not the same thing as having a wrong opinion. We all have wrong opinions sometimes. These were lies. Why aren't these people fired? Why aren't they punished? It's because this idea that moral reality is a fiction, that any reality that is not physical reality, and even some like gender that are physical realities, even the moral reality that comes out of those physical realities is a fiction. This is a true postmodern philosophy. This has been true for years. It has been working its way through the academies to the people who go to the academies. The people who go from the academies into journalism believe that everything that does not smack you in the head like a rock is a fiction. And even the idea that smacking you in the head with a rock is wrong is a fiction. And you can rewrite fiction to change reality. If you change the narrative, you change the moral reality. Yuval Harari essentially believes this. He's the moral philosopher of the globalists at Davos who own the companies for which people like Joe Scarborough work. So the liars aren't fired because they're doing their job, which is changing reality for the better by changing the narrative in any way they see that they think is going to be better. And they actually have this philosophy. They say, stop reporting the facts and report the truth, by which they mean what they think the best truth would be. So the liars aren't fired. And when Donald Trump won the election, they were essentially all fired. It was like The Apprentice times 1,000,000. You are fired. And people wonder why I'm happy. A few years back, members of the world's elite met at the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and launched the Great Reset Initiative. The Great Reset sounds ominous. You know why? It is. But what exactly is their plan? What does it mean for America? In short, they aim to transform the world economy. Founder and director of the forum, Klaus Schwab, even wrote, we need a great reset of capitalism. So if successful, their plan would destroy our American way of life. Hillsdale College, which you know I love. I taught there for a couple of weeks. I just think they're a great place. They held a conference on the Great Reset, and you can view and learn from the speakers through an online video series. Hillsdale's video series will give you insight into the origins and leaders of the Great Reset, how the ideology of woke capitalism is infiltrating large corporations, the Great Reset from China's perspective, alternatives to the Great Reset, and more. If you believe that our country's founding principles have made it the freest and most prosperous nation in history, or you're alarmed by the growing influence of the so-called global elite like I am, then Hillsdale College's video series is a must-watch. Get instant access to the Great Reset video series today by going to hillsdale.edu/Klavan. It's free, it's easy to sign up, and you know it's worth your time because it's from Hillsdale. Go to hillsdale.edu/Klavan, hillsdale.edu/ how do you spell it? It's Klavan. No E's in Klavan. I just make it look this easy. Sign up for Hillsdale now. Chapter 3, Money Lies. Now, I got to do this one quickly because I'm running out of time, but it's very important. All right. So think about this. Terrible assassination in New York. The head of a healthcare company, Brian Thompson, the head of United Healthcare, which is a big health insurance firm, was gunned down in cold blood by an assassin, essentially, the silenced pistol. This is it was right before dawn in the middle of New York, Midtown Manhattan, on the day, right around the corner from where the Rockefeller tree was about to be lit, which is a huge, huge tourist day. The bullet casings had words etched into them like deny and delay, which is the title I believe, from the title of a book about the health insurance industry called Delay, Deny, Defend, Why Insurance Companies Don't Pay Claims and What You Can Do About It. So as I speak, the police are still searching for this guy, but it seems like he was unhappy about the way the healthcare industry is run and maybe has a personal grudge, I don't know. And leftists are celebrating this murder because they think the healthcare industry is evil. So someone like Taylor Lorenz, who was formerly on the Washington Post, wrote for the New York Times, now she's with Vox. I think she has a podcast with Vox. She said, people wonder why we want these executives dead, and then link that to another healthcare company, basically, targeting them. A guy from Columbia School of Social Work, a guy named Anthony Zenkis, tweeted, today we mourn the death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, gunned down. Wait, I'm sorry. Today we mourn the death of 68,000 Americans who needlessly die each year so that insurance companies execs like Brian Thompson can become multimillionaires. It's really evil. I'm sorry, it's evil stuff. No matter what you think, we don't solve our problems by assassinating people, I hope. And so I just want to point out two things. At the same time this was happening, there were these massive shakeups in South Korea and in France. In South Korea, the president called for martial law. The legislature canceled that, but the troops went into the street and then went out of the street. And now they're talking about impeaching the president. In France, the government collapsed, which sounds dramatic, but it's part of the parliamentary process. It was the first time it's happened in 60 years. They voted no confidence for not the president, who was Macron, but the prime minister. And both of these incidents had one thing in common, okay? The South Korea thing and the France thing, they all centered around a budget dispute, a budget dispute that was going to cause more expense, bigger welfare state, which meant more taxes. How are they going to pay for it and whether they should pay for it? And in France, there was going to be an austerity budget, and the left protested against that because the left thinks the welfare state should be everything. And so Marine Le Pen, who's on the right, and they always say the left and the far right, but there's the left and the right. There's people on, liberals and conservatives, basically. She joined in with them in order to dump the government, and that's how the government went there. And the thing about this is, when I call this money lies, it's because the lie of health insurance and the lie of the welfare state are the same lie, which is that we can afford to pay for people's bottomless needs. And we can. Health insurance is a business model that does not work. It's like protection. And this is not this guy's fault. It's not Brian Thompson's fault. This is the business that he's in. He was, for all I know, he was trying to run it as well as it's possible to run it, but it can't be run well because it's essentially, my thriller writing colleague, Jonathan Kellerman, also a psychologist, very bright guy. He wrote about this many years ago in the New York Times. He called it a protection racket. It's like, we will, if you pay us, we will protect you, but you can't protect people because healthcare costs are bottomless, right? Everyone needs healthcare. It's endlessly expensive and no one can pay for it. And so when the government takes it over, like in Canada and the UK, what ultimately happens? They ultimately vote for what Canada has already voted for and the UK is in the process of voting for, which is killing you. They call it assisted suicide, but it's doctors killing you. And it starts out, and it's not about the slippery slope. It's wrong per se. I mean, I can imagine situations in which that might be reasonable, but I don't think there should be a law about it because it's never right. It's just sometimes the only thing you can do. Sometimes in life you have to do the wrong thing to do the right thing, but you shouldn't make a law saying you can do the wrong thing. But essentially what happens is people, and this is happening in Canada, over 4% of deaths in Canada are now doctor kills. Let's call them that. Instead of assisted suicide, let's call them doctor kills. It's where the doctor kills somebody who is sick, maybe terminal, maybe just not in constant pain, maybe just not happy, maybe just badly dressed. The doctor kills you. And you come in and you say to someone, well, then this actually happened in Canada. You come in and say, here's a guy with cerebral palsy. And the guy says, it's very selfish of you to go on living because you're just costing people so much money. That's how it works. And when Obamacare came in and people like me were saying there would be death panels and people laughed, ho, 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 there'll be no death panels. Ho, 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 there are no death panels. Not yet. But ultimately, there will be because eventually the government can't pay for healthcare. And this is part of an even bigger lie, all right, which is you don't have to pay your own way. The thing about lies, it's not just liars. People want lies, right and left. People want you to lie to them, and they get angry at you when you don't lie to them because then you tell them the truth, and it's ugly. Things cost money. You have to pay your way because we can give charity, but we cannot entitle you to your healthcare being paid for because we can't do it. And insurance companies can't pay for it either. And in America, and so the West is broke because of the welfare state. The West is broke because we were so rich in the 60s and 70s, basically. We started this welfare state. No one has had the guts to destroy it. No one has had the guts to turn it back. The one time Bill Clinton did it, he was forced to do it when he had welfare reform. Obama erased that. It was working great. It was really doing a good job, but Obama erased it because they want that welfare state in place because it keeps you enslaved. It keeps you dependent on them. The more welfare there is, the more you need them. And once they pay for your health care, they can tell you what to do because they are in control of life and death. In America, this is supported by the fact that we're the reserve currency. And I got to take a minute to explain this, even though I have to do it quickly. Our economy is so big and it's fairly stable that everyone uses the dollar when they trade internationally, right? They have to have some common currency, and the currency they use is the dollar. And that means they also have to use our financial systems for international trade, right? And this is why Donald Trump says, if we lost the dollar as the world currency, I think that would be the equivalent of losing a war, because all this money that we're spending is essentially valueless. We're printing money to give it away to support our government, to keep our government and our welfare state afloat. That money is worthless except for the fact that everybody is using it. That gives it its worth, right? And so that's why he's threatening to put huge tariffs on Brazil and Russia and China, because they're having meetings saying, hey, maybe we can come up with another currency to compete with the United States. And he's saying, I will stop you by putting like 100% tariffs on all your goods. And because everyone uses our currency, we can sanction them like we were doing with Iran under Trump. We say, we're going to cut you out of the system, and now your economy is going to be really damaged. Never stops them from doing it, but it does harm them. It does harm them when we can cut them out. But we're doing that to so many countries that it starts to lose force, and it starts to make it attractive to those countries to use another currency, which would destroy us because we're spending money we don't have. Okay, I hope that all makes sense. Because people are using our dollars, they have value they don't actually have. And so we can continue spending our welfare state, which has already gone broke, but nobody wants to admit it. We have to reform entitlements. We have to reform Medicare. We have to reform Social Security, but we keep saying we don't have to do it. And it's being kept afloat by this illusion. Ultimately, our worthless money is worth something because the world uses it. If they stop, we will crash. And the price we pay, this is the price we pay, is that politicians can keep buying votes by promising us things they don't have. They only have because we're taking it from the rest of the world. This lie is simple. The lie is that things are free. we'll give you free healthcare. You'll have free this, you'll have free that. Nothing is free. Someone is paying, and it's always you. Whether you're poor or rich, if you think the rich are paying their fair share so I can get my health care, not happening. You are being enslaved, and ultimately you will be killed. You will literally be killed. You will come in and say, I've got a cold. They'll say, well, you don't want to be selfish and make everybody pay for your cold. You got to die. We're out of money anyway. If you think someone else is paying it for you, you are lying to yourself and you are being lied to. And you're going to end up very, very angry when you find out the truth. And the proof of that pudding is the way people reacted on the left when this poor man was shot down in the streets of New York. The holidays, as you know, are all about family, those precious moments around the dinner table, sharing stories and creating memories that last a lifetime. But have you thought about protecting those memories and your family's future, even when you're no longer there to share them? That's where Policygenius comes in. As the country's leading online insurance marketplace, they've made finding and buying life insurance remarkably simple. Your loved ones deserve a financial safety net that can cover everything from daily expenses to long-term investments. And the best part, with Policygenius, you can compare quotes from America's top insurers side by side, completely free with no hidden fees. Their licensed support team is there to help you every step of the way, answering questions, handling paperwork, and advocating for you throughout the process. Even if you have life insurance through work, it might not provide enough coverage for your family's needs, and it typically doesn't allow you to take it with you when you change jobs. That's why thousands of satisfied customers have given Policygenius 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Secure your families tomorrow so you have peace of mind today. Head to policygenius.com/Klavan or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/KLAVAN. Final chapter. All lies are one lie. Now, my lovely daughter, Faith Moore, who I spent Thanksgiving with, she has this wonderful podcast called Storytime for Grown-Ups, in which what she does is she reads classic books. She came upon this brilliant idea that people like me want to talk to you about classic books, what they mean, what they supply, the joy of them, and all this stuff. But what she says is a lot of people can't even understand the language and don't know enough about history and social custom to understand what's at stake in a lot of these stories. So she reads them to you in their podcast, Storytime for Grown-Ups, which you can get wherever podcasts are sold. She reads you these stories, like she read Pride and Prejudice and what was the other one, Jane Eyre. And she describes why people are doing what they're doing and what a sentence might mean that might be a little complex, might be written in Victorian style, and you might not get it. And she doesn't interrupt herself too often, but she just reads the book. It's like an audiobook, but it's an audiobook with notes, basically. And I have to say, and I know I'm a proud dad, but even so, I always wondered, my father was a famous radio disc jockey in New York. And I always wondered where his talent went, because, you know, I can talk to you and you understand what I'm saying. And my son he has a wonderful podcast as well, but she got it all. My Faith is an actual brilliant broadcast talent. And as you know, I have an eye for broadcast talent, or an ear for broadcast talent. And she's now doing A Christmas Carol for Christmas. And you really want to, if you love this stuff, you should, and you have a hard time reading it, Storytime for Grown-Ups, really good. So she's doing A Christmas Carol. And over Thanksgiving, she pointed something out to me that I had never noticed before. In both the book and the 1951 movie, which is the only movie that's worth watching of A Christmas Carol with Alastair Sim, the young Ebenezer Scrooge, you all know the story, right? This Scrooge is a miser. He's taken back in the past, present, and future by Christmas, the spirits of Christmas, and he's reformed. And the spirit of Christmas past takes him back to see the love of his life. In the movie, she's called Alice. In the book, she's called Belle. And he loves her, but then slowly he takes on the values of the world and he becomes a miser. And she says, I'm breaking off. She breaks off the engagement. And here's the scene from the 51 movie with Alastair Sim, where Alice, as she's called in the movie, breaks off the engagement with the young Ebenezer Scrooge. It's cut 9.
Then you no longer love me.
You no longer love me.
When have I ever said that?
In words, never.
Well, in what then?
In the way you have changed.
But how have I changed towards you?
by changing towards the world.
Is it such a terrible thing for a man to struggle to be something better than he is?
Another idol has replaced me in your heart. A golden idol.
It's singular. The world that can be so brutally cruel to the poor professes to condemn the pursuit of wealth in the same breath.
You fear the world too much.
With reason.
Wonderful, wonderful dialogue that comes straight from the book, most of it, that he fears the world, so he's taken on the values of the world. In other words, if the world is going to say, we don't like you because you're poor, then he is never going to be poor again. If the world is going to say you're weak because you're poor, he's going to cling to that money. And so he becomes a money-grubbing guy. Now, this is what Faith pointed out to me that I didn't remember. In both the book and the movie, he then finds out what happened to the girl he left behind, who, like I said, in the book is called Belle. And in the movie, which is kind of an anti-capitalism movie, it's all about the Industrial Revolution and how now everything is based on capital and the big money interests are taking over and so it's an anti-capitalism movie. And in the movie, he goes back and he finds the girl as she is in the present after she broke up with him. And in the movie, she's this saintly but lonesome charity worker. She's a martyr to his greed. She's feeding the poor at Christmas time in a shelter with a sad but saintly look on her face. Here's just a little clip of that. There's cut 10.
And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing.
Do you feel more rested now, my dear? I do. Bless your dear, gentle heart. Rest. Do you know me, darling? I never thought there was anyone like you left in the whole wide world. Cut me throat, rip me liver if I'm telling a lie. This is the happiest Christmas I ever had.
So that's what they used to call the stage Irishman, right? She's every Irish cliche you can imagine. Cut me throat, rip me liver if you have. But and Alice in this has got, if you weren't watching, if you're just listening, she has this worn, lovely face. She's a lovely girl, but she has this kind of worn, tired face, and she's being kind and she's being nice, but she has nothing in her own life. Her own life has been sacrificed because she lost Ebenezer Scrooge, okay? Now, here's the passage from the book, which is not an anti-capitalist book. It's an anti-miser book. It's an anti-love of money book, because we remember from the Bible that the love of money, it's not money, it's the love of money is the root of all evil. It is being afraid to lose your money. It is doing things for money. It's putting money at the top of everything. It's Ayn Randism. It's Ayn Randism. It's using money as an excuse. Well, I have to do this because my business is the most important, all of that stuff, the whole thing, right? But the book is not an anti-capitalism story. It's an anti-miser story. Here's the passage of the book. He goes to visit the woman he lost as she is now. Her name is Belle. And she finds, what is she? She's a mom. She has a great, big, bustling family that gathers around her and pulls her hair and undoes the ribbons and all this stuff. And she's always a mess and all this stuff. I'm just going to read. I edited this for length. But here is: the spirit takes Scrooge to her house, and he finds a room, not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like Belle that Scrooge believed it was she, until he saw Belle, now a comely matron, sitting opposite her daughter. The noise in this room was perfectly tumultuous, for there were more children there than Scrooge, in his agitated state of mind, could count, and every child was conducting itself like 40. And they're pulling her dress, and they're pulling her apart. But now a knocking at the door was heard, and such a rush immediately ensued that Belle, with laughing face and plundered dress, was borne towards it, the center of a flushed and boisterous group, just in time to greet the father of the family. And now Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever, when the master of the house, having his daughter leaning fondly on him, sat down with her and her mother at his own fireside. And when Scrooge thought that such another creature, quite as graceful and as full of promise, might have called him father, and been a springtime in the haggard winter of his life, his sight grew very dim indeed. And of course, it's Dickens writing, so everybody's sight grows dim when he writes, because he's a wonderful, sentimental writer. The anti-capitalists, the left, believe that without capitalism, we'll become saints who have emptied ourselves and are giving people free stuff. We're going to give people free stuff. And of course, charity is wonderful, but entitlements are not charity. Charity is when I give you something out of the kindness of my heart. Entitlements is when the government robs me to give it to you so that they can keep power. Those are two different things, entirely different things. But still, this idea that capitalism is in itself bad, and what we should be is we should be these empty saints. It's just not going to happen. It's not a real thing. But Dickens understood something different, because Dickens was a genius, and he understood that the opposite of the love of money is life. That's the message of the Gospels. That's more than any sex stuff that we all get caught on. The message of the Gospels is that if you love money, you will lose your life. If you open your hands, you will have life in abundance. Of course, charity, but Jesus tells you, charity is not going to change anything. The poor you will always have with you, but his gift to you is life in abundance. Capitalism has made us rich, and that's good. There's many good things that come about that. It's no small thing. But Louise Perry, who I just, I've talked about this before, there's this movement of women, mostly Catholic, I think, but not all of them. Movement of women, Spencer and I sometimes call them the Three Graces, because there's Mary Harrington, Erica Bakayakji, and Louise Perry, although there's also a couple of others that I just absolutely love. But anyway, they're these women who have either had children or seen that the sexual revolution has gone wrong, and they are waking up. And Louise Perry has a wonderful piece in First Things about the fact that the rich countries are dying. They are all dying. This is interesting. After the election, Breitbart had this headline: "Liberal women are undergoing sterilization and blaming Trump. The election tied my hands." This is by Catherine Hamilton. "Several liberal women have gotten sterilized or plan to, blaming their decision to become infertile on Donald Trump winning the 2024 election because they think that he's going to ban abortion, which he said he wouldn't do." So it doesn't really make sense. It's just this hatred of life that has infected these people. And, that's one of the things God says in the Bible: "Those who hate me love death." And so Louise Perry, in this piece in First Things, she says that the people in these rich countries have stopped having children, and that all our problems are really this problem, that we're dying. She points out that modernity and progress and all these things depend upon a large superfluity of young men, that it's young men who go to Mars. Elon Musk can send rockets to Mars, but if there are no young men, nobody's getting in that rocket, right? It's young men who invent things, who see the next things, while women are going, "I'm the first woman to ever be on television." Young men are inventing the next thing that will come after television. That's because men and women are different. That's the way it is. And of course, I'm speaking in generalities, and of course there are exceptions, but that's not the point, because this disavowal of motherhood, this disavowal of homemaking, this disavowal of family, this idea that it's just family, that it's that our children really should belong to the state. It takes a village to raise a child. This thing that you're just a mother, you're just an at-home mother, has got to be the biggest lie of any other lie I can think of in our society. Because a productive, creative future depends on motherhood, depends on home, depends on young men moving out of home to support more women and more mothers and more homes. This is the way the world works. It's the way the world was made, because the world is not just a thing. It's not just nature. It is a creation, and it has a creator. And the things that we see, the spiritual deductions we make, are real deductions. We're not creating morality. We're finding what morality is. We're finding out morality from the nature of creation. Nature itself is nothing, right? Nature makes it hot. We build an air conditioning. That's fine. But nature makes us men and women because masculine and feminine are woven into spiritual reality. This is why when Protestants are shaking their fists at Catholics about the Virgin Mary, I always say, no, there's a point here. She is at the center of the Jesus story. She is the human center of the Jesus story, as Jesus is the godly center of the human story. So we take a look at the lie of ideology, which has eliminated the glory of motherhood and homemaking by centralizing on the power dynamics of marriage, which they think are unfair, the power dynamics of men and women, which they think are unfair, the essentiality, the essentialism of men and women and their gender assignment, which does not come from them and it does not come from society. It comes from God. You have an assignment in your gender. There's something you must do in your gender, and that ideology has eliminated the glory of motherhood and homemaking and the efficacy of men. The lie that the moral world is a fiction, which is the other lie we were talking about, that you can change the story of mankind and therefore change mankind, that has eliminated the glory of manhood. That's why men feel under attack. And why we're being told, oh, this Trump, it's bitter men. Men should be bitter. They should be pissed off as hell. They should be saying, no, we have a thing that we do. We built all the stuff around you. We have a thing that we do, and we got to make more of them. And the way to make more of them, which is lots of fun, but it also entails responsibility. It's not only fun. It has a purpose. It has a telos. We didn't create that, and we can't make it go away by telling a different story, just like we can't make Joe Biden's dishonesty go away by telling a different story. And the lies that things are free, that lie that things are free, that make us think, because now all the poor people who want to be rich are moving to the rich countries. This is also in Louise Perry's article, that the poor people are moving from the poor countries, are moving to the rich countries. And we're saying, oh yeah, we can afford to pay them because everything is free. Well, just give them the money. We have so much money, we can give them the money. But no, those young men do not have the education, do not have the culture to become the young men that we need to go to Mars. They are not going to become them. Maybe their children will. It's not a racial thing. It's simply a cultural thing. But no, we can't take in everybody. They'll only ruin our society. We can't afford to support them because nothing is free. So that lie that people are free, that things are free, is what is allowing this mass immigration that is making everybody unhappy. All these lies are one lie, that the spiritual world is an illusion, that human nature and human morality and male and female and creation are the works of men, and the value of money are the works of men and can be recreated by men in their image. We can make sex a purposeless pleasure, that killing babies, is a human right, and God forgive us for that. God forgive us for that. A lot of you hold Donald Trump on a pedestal, and I admire and respect Donald Trump. I'm not knocking him at all. I respect his courage. I respect his boldness. I respect his common sense. And I criticize other things about him. But his victory is the symbol of a blow against all these lies and the system that has stuck us with these lies. It's not just Donald Trump who fought those lies. It's 1,000 little men as little as you and me, who simply would not lie, even when people begged us to lie, even when people threatened us if he lied, even when they censored us if he lied. There are people like us, not just at the DailyWire, but at all kinds of companies and without companies, and women too, in families telling their children the truth, even when their children want to hear lies, and even when their school system is telling them lies. This is a victory. We are in the midst of a true victory of little people who tell the truth. Do thou likewise, and the day will be ours. This Christmas season, as we celebrate the gift of life, you have an opportunity to make a profound difference in the lives of mothers and their unborn children. Every day, women face uncertain circumstances, searching for hope and support during challenging pregnancies. That's where PreBorn Ministries steps in. Let me share a story about Kelsey. When she discovered she was pregnant, she felt overwhelmed and unsure about her future. Through a PreBorn network clinic, she found not just medical care, but a community of support. The moment she saw her baby on the ultrasound and heard that heartbeat, everything changed. Today, she cherishes every moment with her son, who brings immeasurable joy to her life. Stories like Kelsey's happen every day at PreBorn clinics across the country. This Christmas, you have the opportunity to be part of these transformative moments. Through a special matching grant, your gift of $28 is doubled, making twice the impact. To join this vital work, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby. Or make your secure donation online at preborn.com/Klavan. Let me repeat that, pound 250, keyword baby, or preborn.com/KLAVAN. Your gift today could save countless lives tomorrow. Only a few days left to join the fight and save 50% while you're doing it. If you've ever thought about joining DailyWire Plus, this is the time. Right now, new annual memberships are half price. It's our best deal of the year. That's one full year of uncensored daily shows with limited ads, groundbreaking documentaries, and hit movies like Am I Racist? Series including Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's The Gospels, along with our entire entertainment catalog. Plus, you get unlimited access to Bent Key, our kids app, packed with content that reflects your values. If you're already a member, give the gift of DailyWire Plus this holiday season at 50% off. The deal ends Sunday. Go to dailywire.com/cyberweek now and join the fight. Klavan Klapbacks.
We're through with lies and liars in this house.
Great movie. only Tom would have come out. Good for you, Tom. All right, from Talitha. Great name. First, I want to say thank you for all the work you've done. I enjoy all those from the Daily Wire, but you are the only one I listen to regularly. Well, of course. I mean, you have opened my eyes to new perspectives and have helped me love God and others more. I share your podcast often because I feel like our country needs more of your message. But because you seem to enjoy answering critiques from your listeners, I have an honest question. Why do you make light of grave sins? What God calls abomination, you laugh at. I'm speaking about sexual sins. More specifically, when you laughed at the idea of women servicing men in Trump's cabinet and seemingly made fun of anyone who would speak out against it. Well, I didn't make fun of people who would speak out against it, I don't think. But I was making jokes about some of these guys. This is when Matt Gaetz was still on the table, and Pete Hegseth made a joke about them chasing, the White House is going to be filled with guys chasing women in their negligees through the halls, as they did during the John F. Kennedy administration. And I understand that, well, why do I make fun of it? I understand that sexual sins can be as bad as any other sin and destroy lives. And obviously it seems like a little thing, but it's a terribly big thing. And the abortion catastrophe in both this family and the world is simply a result of people having sex when they shouldn't be and in ways they shouldn't be. And that's absolutely true. And so is the AIDS crisis and all these things. So it's a big deal. However, it's also part of human nature. It will always be there. It has always been there, and it doesn't go away. And guys chasing girls through the rooms is part of that. And frequently, despite what the Me Too people tell you, frequently the girls are enjoying it just as much as the guys. And so it's funny as well as sad. And, there's a wonderful line in Aldous Huxley. He wrote a sequel to Brave New World. Brave New World is a fantastic book, and I love it. And he wrote a sequel, which I haven't read, but there's an island in Brave New World where the people go who will not conform. And in this island, somebody gives advice to someone else, and he says, "It's dark because you are trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly, even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. I used to be preposterously serious, such a humorless little prig. Lightly, lightly." And so things are going to be a certain way. I speak about them seriously, but I also laugh at them because they're part of human nature. And human nature is funny because we were made to be second to the angels, and instead we're third to the apes. And that's funny. That's the essence of humor. And that's why I do it. And I'm comfortable with it. You should be comfortable with it too, because it doesn't mean I've lost my moral senses. I have not. From Jackson, I'm a big fan. I've recently been reading the Cameron Winter series. Here it is, Woman Underground. You should be buying it for your relatives, for gifts. I can definitely say that the Cameron Winter is the best character I've ever read, and the first time I've truly related and looked up to a character. I take issue with adding the Bible or any religious classes to public schools. Even though I support these classes in principle and practice, it will be a nightmare as a public school graduate of my state, which is Oklahoma. I know that teachers will utilize these classes to promote their beliefs that are contrary to the intent of the class. Well, I totally understand what you're talking about. And you also talked about not liking the superintendent of Oklahoma Instruction, whom I praised, but I don't know anything about him. I was simply praising this idea. But I think with sufficient guidance that they can at least we should be talking about God in school because God is real. In the same way we should be talking about science. When you ban him from public discourse, you are essentially saying he doesn't exist. And that is where we lost the argument. We lost the argument when we stopped public prayer as a nonsense, when we stopped talking about it as prejudice. That was a big, big mistake. We should bring him back like gangbusters because he's really there, and you talk about things that are real, and we should talk about them. And I understand your concerns, but still, even then, we should be talking about them. All right, I got to stop there unless you are a member. Become a member today. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. We've got a great, great bargain going on right this minute. So become a member and help us out. Or plunge into the eternal darkness of Klavanlessness. You just learned how bad it can be. Countries fall apart, economies crash, people die. It's just bad. You don't want to be there if you're already a member. However, you got another 10 minutes before that happens. So come over to Member Block.